A crisis unfolding in real time. Smoke over the Persian Gulf, oil markets in chaos, military vessels burning, cargo ships exploding in open waters, diplomats scrambling behind closed doors while the global economy trembles. These are not scenes from a geopolitical thriller. They are the events that have unfolded within the span of just 48 hours. One of the most advanced warships ever built, the USS Gerald R. Ford, experienced a serious fire on board. A US-owned cargo vessel flying a Marshall Islands flag was struck by an Iranian unmanned surface vehicle near the Iraqi port of Basra. Video footage shows the moment of impact as flames erupt across the deck. Oil prices surged almost immediately. Global stock markets reacted with sharp declines. And yet, in the midst of escalating tension, the President of the United States took to social media to claim that the unfolding situation was, in his words, a very good thing. Two sides. One rapidly expanding catastrophe. On one side stands a superpower that launched a conflict it may not be able to finish. On the other stands a regime that many analysts predicted would collapse quickly, but instead appears to be adapting, hardening, and building new alliances with rival powers such as Moscow and Beijing. In the background, the architecture of American global leadership, alliances, credibility, economic stability, appears to be cracking under immense pressure. And the speed of this change is what makes it alarming. This is not a slow decline unfolding over decades. It is a geopolitical shift happening in days. What happened during the last 48 hours matters far beyond the battlefield. It may redefine how the world views American power. To understand why, we need to rewind. The promise of a quick war. When the first strikes against Iran began, the American public was given a clear narrative. The operation would be swift. It would be surgical. It would cripple Iran's military infrastructure and pressure its leadership into submission. According to the early messaging, the Iranian regime was fragile. The population allegedly resented their government and would welcome external pressure. If the military network was damaged quickly enough, the leadership would either collapse or be forced into negotiations. That was the pitch. But the reality unfolding on the ground looks very different. For nearly 2 weeks, waves of bombardment have struck targets across Iran. Energy grids have been damaged, desalination plants have been hit, oil depots have burned, entire sections of infrastructure have been disrupted. Thousands of civilians are reportedly dead. Yet despite the scale of the attacks, multiple intelligence sources have indicated that Iran's leadership structure remains largely intact. Rather than collapsing, the political system appears to be consolidating power. History offers a clear explanation for why. When external forces strike civilian infrastructure, populations rarely turn against their own governments. Instead, they rally against the external enemy. The London Blitz during World War II hardened British resistance. Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities strengthened Ukrainian unity. Bombing civilian targets tends to produce the opposite effect of what military planners hope. It creates resolve rather than surrender. And according to testimony delivered before the US Senate by a senior NATO commander, that exact dynamic may now be playing out in Iran. The incident that changed the narrative. Among the most controversial developments in the conflict was a strike on a school in the Iranian town of Manaban. Reports indicate that an elementary school was hit during a bombing run. The casualties were devastating. Hundreds of deaths, including many children. Initially, the incident was denied. Officials claimed the United States had not targeted the location. But during Senate testimony, a senior general acknowledged under oath that the strike had indeed occurred. The admission transformed the narrative of the war overnight. In the modern information environment, images and stories travel faster than official statements. Within hours, footage and memorials began circulating across international media networks and social platforms. For Iran's leadership, the tragedy became a powerful symbol. For the United States, it became a propaganda disaster. The Strait of Hormuz crisis. The first major sign that the conflict is expanding beyond direct strikes involves the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is one of the most important oil transit routes in the world. Nearly 1/5 of global petroleum supply moves through it. In recent days, multiple commercial vessels have been attacked in the region. Reports suggest that more than a dozen ships have been struck in a series of incidents. Iran's new supreme leader issued a statement emphasizing the strategic leverage Iran holds over the strait. He warned that additional pressure points could be opened against American interests. The message was unmistakable. If the war continues, Iran has the ability to disrupt global energy markets. At the same time, confusion erupted when a US government agency posted online that American naval forces were safely escorting commercial vessels through the strait. The statement briefly calmed markets before being deleted. Officials later admitted the escort operations had not actually taken place. The explanation offered was a miscommunication, but the damage had already been done. Markets had moved based on incorrect information from a federal agency. Investors lost money. Oil traders reacted to a claim that was not true. The episode raised a troubling question. If the government itself cannot maintain consistent messaging during a crisis, who controls the narrative? The diplomatic shockwave. While tensions escalated in the Persian Gulf, an unexpected diplomatic development was unfolding thousands of miles away. Russian officials traveled to Miami, Florida, for meetings with American representatives. The discussions reportedly focused on economic cooperation and the potential easing of sanctions on Russian oil exports. The timing was extraordinary. Russia has maintained ties with Iran throughout the conflict. Yet instead of confronting Moscow about its role in supporting Tehran, the meeting appeared to explore economic concessions. International observers were stunned. During a virtual meeting of the G7, several allied leaders reportedly pressed for clarity about the United States' broader strategy. What is the objective of the war? How long will the strikes continue? What does victory look like? According to diplomatic sources, no clear answers were provided. The uncertainty has begun to ripple through long-standing alliances. For decades, the United States has served as the central organizing force behind Western security structures. But when allies cannot identify the strategic direction of a conflict, confidence begins to erode. The information war. Military conflicts today are fought not only with missiles and aircraft, but also with narratives. Every strike, every casualty, every statement becomes part of a global messaging battle. In this arena, Iran, China, and Russia appear to be moving aggressively. Iranian diplomats have circulated images memorializing the children killed in the school strike. State media outlets broadcast these stories across multiple languages. Chinese officials have amplified criticism of the bombing campaign, positioning Beijing as a voice of restraint and stability. Russian media channels have portrayed the conflict as evidence of American decline. Meanwhile, American messaging has struggled to keep pace. Contradictory statements, deleted posts, and shifting explanations have created confusion. In modern warfare, perception can be almost as important as battlefield outcomes. If a nation loses credibility in the global information environment, every subsequent statement becomes harder to believe. A war without a clear strategy. The central concern raised by critics of the current conflict is not simply the scale of violence. It is the absence of a clearly articulated long-term plan. Historically, successful military campaigns are guided by three essential elements: a defined strategic objective, a coalition of supporting allies, an exit strategy. Observers argue that none of these components currently appear fully developed. The military strikes have demonstrated significant destructive capability. Yet destroying infrastructure does not automatically produce political outcomes. Without a pathway to negotiation or regime change, the conflict risks becoming an open-ended confrontation. Meanwhile, Iran's leadership continues to function. Rather than collapsing, the government has used the attacks to rally domestic support and deepen ties with other powers. The economic ripple effects. Beyond the battlefield, the war's consequences are already being felt in global markets. Oil prices have surged amid fears that shipping routes could be disrupted. Higher energy costs ripple through nearly every sector of the economy, from transportation to food production. Financial markets have reacted with volatility as investors attempt to assess the long-term implications. Supply chains, which only recently recovered from pandemic disruptions, now face the possibility of new instability. And geopolitical uncertainty often causes countries to reconsider their strategic dependencies. If allies believe American leadership has become unpredictable, they may begin developing alternative economic partnerships. The three possible paths forward. At this moment, analysts broadly outline three possible trajectories for the conflict. 1. Managed de-escalation. In this scenario, diplomatic channels eventually succeed in cooling tensions. Both sides claim partial victories, and the intensity of military operations decreases. Markets stabilize, oil prices settle. But the structural damage to international relationships remains. Even if peace returns, the crisis will have revealed vulnerabilities in the existing global order. 2. Global realignment. A second possibility involves a deeper shift in geopolitical alignment. Countries that previously relied heavily on American leadership may begin diversifying their alliances. New economic and security partnerships could emerge. The United States would remain powerful, but the era of uncontested global dominance could give way to a more multipolar world. 3. Escalation spiral. The most dangerous path involves further escalation. If Iran expands proxy operations across the region or disrupts shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, the conflict could broaden rapidly. Higher oil prices could trigger a global recession. Additional strikes might provoke retaliation from multiple actors. In the worst case, a miscalculation could draw additional countries directly into the war. History shows that large conflicts often begin with precisely this kind of chain reaction. A turning point in global power. Regardless of which scenario unfolds, the last 2 weeks have already altered the geopolitical landscape. Allies are reassessing their security arrangements. Rival powers are testing new partnerships. Markets are reacting to uncertainty at a scale not seen in years. Even if the fighting stops tomorrow, the lesson for many nations will be clear. Relying entirely on one power carries risks. Countries may begin building parallel systems, new trade networks, new defense agreements, new diplomatic structures. These changes, once set in motion, rarely reverse quickly. The question facing the world. The central question emerging from this crisis is larger than any single battle or political decision. Has American credibility been permanently damaged? Or is the current turmoil simply a temporary disruption in an otherwise resilient global system? History will eventually provide the answer. But one fact is undeniable. The events unfolding today are reshaping international politics in real time, and the consequences, economic, diplomatic, and military, may echo for decades. The world is watching closely, because moments like this do not happen often. They are the moments when the balance of global power begins to shift.